And the way we stay down here, number one, is by evoking all 5 senses. Okay? Evoking taste is really tough. But making sure that you are evoking auditory senses and giving us a sense of how things feel in the room by temperature, and giving us a sense, is it humid or is it dry? Giving us a sense of what it sounds like. Can you hear birds cheeping, or can you hear the hum of an air conditioning unit? These sorts of things will actually automatically be a little more concrete just because they're used so infrequently. Writers tend to rely on vision alone. And so, stepping into those. But another way to do that, and again, remember this is a continuum, and you can go too far, but another way you can do this, if you want to describe this dog, if you say, instead of there was a dog by the side of the road, if you say, there was a wet, one-legged poodle, mud-stained and snarling as at the side of the road as a rat scuttles by trying to get at the bit of rotten meat that the poodle is holding, we now have evoked an image that just by only using the visuals, we have now done something much more concrete. Everyone in this room is now imagining something very much more similar to one another. Now the trade-off on that is that you used more words. Because you used more words on this thing, we are now going more into immersion and less into pacing. And it is possible to use too many words, depending on the type of book you're writing and your own personal threshold as a reader or writer. You all know that some people think that Robert Jordan used too many words sometimes. Generally, I found that different people don't agree on where the too many words are being used, but some people would say that's because Robert Jordan was extremely immersive, and his books were extremely immersive, and so there was a lot of detail, and a lot of it was very concrete. The best thing to do, the perfect thing to do, would be anytime you can bring something down this line without using more words, with using the same words but better words, that is something you should learn to do immediately. Anytime you can write something more clearly with fewer words, that is something you should learn to do immediately. Okay? Now, if I were an editor looking at a first page, and it started off the way I said, we've got this dialogue, we've got occasional lines of world building, and I'm not talking about 6 paragraphs of this. I'm talking about once in a while on this page, a sentence that is extremely concrete in my descriptions. Like I said, he leaned back against the wall, brushing off a few chips of paint, and felt the wall vibrate as the air conditioning unit turned on. That is a very descriptive image. That is very concrete. You mix that with a couple more to let us know what this room smells like. Is it moldy? What does it sound like outside? Are there cars honking, or is it a forest? Give us a few of these things on this page, and you have suddenly done description in a way that if I were an editor, I would look at this and say, wow, no info dumps, some world building, great character moments, and I can really feel that I'm there. Sign me up. All right? That's the first thing I would say. Let's now talk about viewpoint. Viewpoint. How much time do I have left? What have I done? It's 1:45, so I've been going 45 minutes. Man, I gotta warn you. Yeah, I warned you about this. I just kind of go on and on and on. So I hope this is useful. All right, viewpoint. Thing number 2 that I would learn to make that first page just sing to an editor would be viewpoint. Let's talk about viewpoint intents. That says viewpoint intents. Not viewpoint intents, but viewpoint intents. Let's just talk about tense because people don't really sometimes know about it. What do I mean by tense? Present, future, past. That's correct. So you have to present, future, past. So let's see. Let's just do pop quiz time. Which one is used most often in science fiction and fantasy? Past. Past tense. This is the default. Which one's used most often in literary fiction?
Past.
Present is actually, it's slightly more often used. That actually, in YA, it tends to balance half and half as well. A little bit more on the past tense. One thing to understand about the present tense and the past tense is that from the studies they've done, they actually work exactly the same in the reader's mind. They actually don't matter, okay? Except unless you're switching between them for intentional purposes to be jarring. A reader will start reading and will eventually, at the beginning, they'll be annoyed if it's the one they're not used to, but by the end of the chapter won't be noticing anymore, okay? So, because science fiction and fantasy uses the past tense almost exclusively, this is what you should be doing unless you have a good reason to do otherwise. A good reason to do otherwise. Anyone read Elizabeth Moon's Speed of Dark? Okay, Speed of Dark, what does she do in Speed of Dark?
Well, she's trying to make us feel the strangeness of someone with autism.
Yes, you've got a Viewpoint character that has autism, and she, Elizabeth raised an autistic child, and it's in the near future where different programs and what have risen up to help people with autism. You can be extremely autistic and still be part of society in ways that aren't quite possible right now, but it's only because of, they understand autism a little bit better. But she has an autistic character, and so she switches between past and present tense based on which character. Everyone who's not autistic, past tense. Autistic person, present tense. And it is noticeable because of that, and it actually becomes a literary device that works quite well in the book. I thought it was wonderful. In most cases, you don't want to do that. And as a new writer, I would say just do the past tense, unless you have a really good reason otherwise. Okay, just do the past tense. What are our viewpoints? Different types of viewpoint.
First person.
Okay, first.
First limited, information third.
Okay, second. No one mentioned second, but I might as well. Third. It splits into two. And omniscient. I write like that partially, so if I make a spelling error, then it's not recorded on the computer or the video camera forever. I can just claim, oh, it's sloppy. I really got that right. Okay, so we have 4 standard viewpoints. Well, not standard. We have 4 possible viewpoints among the basic canon. Of these, has anyone ever read a story in second person? Weird, huh? You should generally not do the second person unless you're writing a really exploratory literary piece or unless you're writing a choose-your-own-adventure book. It will read like a choose-your-own-adventure book to everyone otherwise. The second the second person is you walk into the room or you walked into the room, and just throw that out of your mind right now. After you've published 6 novels, if you want to write a second-person book and convince your editor it's a good idea, I'll let you try. Other than that, we have these 3. Of these 3, which one is used the most often in science fiction and fantasy? Third limited is used most often. Omniscient used to be the standard. In fact, if you read Tolkien and you read Dune, both of those are magnificent books, and they're both in omniscient. In fact, from my study on this, I don't have hard, fast statistics on this, but it seems to me that limited started to take over in the mid-'80s, and by the '90s was dominant. But in the mid-'80s, a lot of books released in the mid-'80s are like limited except for like occasional breaks into omniscient, which really feel weird. Read the first original draft. It's been changed several times now, but read the original Ender's Game sometime if you want, and you will find that it's almost all in Ender's viewpoint except for like 3 paragraphs occasionally, something from Bean's viewpoint, which just now stands out like a punch to the face. But back then, I think people were still establishing what would happen and what we should do. Omniscient used to be the default. Limited is the default now. I'm not going to say you can't use omniscient. I'm going to say be very, very careful about omniscient, okay? Omniscient should not be done unless you're doing it intentionally and you know what you're doing, okay? So let's talk about the different advantages of these. So we've got first, limited, omniscient, or limited third, and omniscient third. And why you would want to approach these different things. And part of what, when I teach about writing, part of my goal is to get you guys to do things intentionally or to try out new things intentionally rather than just letting it happen. Letting it happen can work, but knowing what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing allows you as a writer to make yourself more productive because you can start to learn, I tried this and this didn't work. Maybe it's because I just don't naturally like doing this. I'll try this other thing. There are other options. All right. First person. What is first person? I did this, I did that. There are actually two breakdowns in first person that not a lot of people know about, and I'm not sure even how these are defined, but we have kind of the first person epistolary and the first person, I'm not even sure what to call it. Immediate, yeah, I think that is what they call it. Okay, I'm not even going to try and write that because this is too thick. Okay, so first person immediate is the standard in YA and middle grade fiction right now, particularly YA. All right? The difference between these is first person immediate means it's just happening right then and it's not actually being written down anywhere. Even though it's written as I, you are just seeing through the character's eyes as things are happening. First person epistolary, as I would say it, or whatever, they probably got some term for it, is you feel like you're reading a document that the character wrote and they're looking back. So, for instance, Assassin's Apprentice, anyone read this? Assassin's Apprentice is first person epistolary. Most YA is going to be first person immediate. The difference being in first person immediate, you don't engage the reader in thinking about when this was written down or if it was written down. You just pretend it's all happening to them right then and they're narrating their life. First person epistolary, Alcatraz books are first person epistolary. Alcatraz is 18 or 19 and he's writing stories about when he was 13. And we know this, and because of this I can address the reader. Third person epistolary, you can address the reader. Another kind of subset of epistolary, anyone read Dracula? Dracula is an epistolary novel which is written in the form of journal entries and letters. Sorcery and Cecilia is another example of this, another good example. They don't have to be as overt as that, as it's coming from diaries and things. Generally, your default for first person should probably be first person immediate. But just be careful if you're doing first person immediate. At that point, you're not really, the character isn't aware that someone is reading this. You're not going to go on lengthy discourses talking directly to the reader in the same way that you might be able to with first person epistolary. But let's talk about this. Why would you use first person? What does it give you?
Gets you inside the character's head.
Okay, say that really loud.
Gets you inside the character's head.
Exactly. There is nothing better for creating a character voice than first person. It gives you a very clear, it builds immediate automatic sympathy because you're hearing in their voice. It is the quickest down and dirty way to build sympathy, and it's also is actually a little bit easier to do info dumps with. You can get away with info dumps in first person in ways you can't in third person. Particularly if it's third person epistolary, you can actually write down and say, you may not understand what this means, and you can actually work it into the story in ways that don't break the flow the way it would otherwise. So it's got a couple of really cool tools to it because of that. You can get across a character voice like there's no tomorrow. Something else you can do is be unreliable in the narrator in a way that you can't get away with in others. The narrator, you can be this fast-talking character that has this wonderful evocative voice that, you know, that you know they're not telling you the truth all the time. But what are the limitations then? Are there any?
The character has to see everything.
Yeah.
You can go outside the character.
Okay, you can't go outside the character's head.
And you also, the reader doesn't exactly know whether the character's telling the truth.
Right. The unreliable narrator in that case can actually, it undermines credibility just a little bit. The story does not feel quite as credible because there is that first person saying it. And even in immediate, it feels like a little bit like someone's telling you a story rather than your experience a story. So it is harder to put yourself into the book a little bit when it's first person, but you are more attracted to the character.